Hi everyone, it's your book coach Liisa Kovala here. Grab a cup of coffee and settle in for a discussion about all things writerly. I'm the author of Sister's Winter War and Surviving Studhof, my father's memories behind the death cave, and I'm an author accelerator, certified fiction, and memoir book coach. As a Finnish Canadian, I also love my coffee. In this podcast, we'll take a coffee break together to chat with authors, publishers, book coaches, marketers, agents, publicists, booksellers, and many others. Welcome to Women Writing. So happy you could join us for a coffee and a chat. In this episode of Women Writing, I'm having a coffee break with Vera Constantineau. Vera is former Poet Laureate of Greater Sudbury in Ontario, a past president of the Sudbury Writers Guild, and a member of several national and international writing organizations, including the Writers Union of Canada, Haiku Canada, and the Haiku Society of America. She's the author of Lines and Other Wrinkles and Enlightenment by Defilement, an Almost Memoir in Haibun. Hi, Vera. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you, Lisa?
Good. It's so great to have you on this new Women Writing podcast. So
Thank
I
you.
don't know if folks know you, but they should because you do all the things. Let me think about this. Haiku, Haibun. Tell me if I'm saying that wrong. Senryu.
Oh,
Is that
hmm
right? Creative
yes,
nonfiction.
yes,
Humor writing.
yes.
I want to say you wrote what I love how you called it an almost memoir. I love that.
Yeah.
We can talk about that. Yeah, so all kinds of things. And you were our Sudbury's former poet laureate. I think what was that, 2 years? Is that a 2-year stint?
It's 2 years, yes, and I was the COVID laureate. So Sudbury didn't really see me at all, but the world got me.
They did.
So that was kind of cool.
They did. In fact, we were talking about this before. You had a podcast for about 2 years, a little over.
Yes.
What was that like for you? Because I'm a newbie and you're an old hat at the podcast stint.
You could have stopped at old. It would have worked.
No.
Um, well, actually, it was called the PL Pod, and it was a real gift to me because I wanted to do a podcast. I've always loved talk radio. I will listen to anything on talk radio, sports, you name it, I've got it. And um, Pierre Dubuc, who was my associate at the library when I was laureate, he was in charge of the technical side of it. But I liked it so much, I did learn how to do it more. The first year I did it, I used my cell phone because I didn't have a mic and I didn't have any other, way of doing it. And so that was kind of interesting because once I started, I felt like I couldn't stop. And somebody would phone in the middle of it. And then, I would make a mistake. And for the first few times I did it, I stopped and did it again.
Oh,
But
and
then Pierre
re-recorded.
said, yeah. And then Pierre said, I can edit that out. And I thought, that's a lot better. And
Yes.
so, I learned as I went. You will learn as you go, although I don't see you having any issues. I've listened to your podcast already, and it just, you know, I
You're too
admire your
kind.
guest.
You're too
No,
kind. I think as we all are, I'm a work in progress, and this podcast is work in progress, but
yeah, we
for
all are.
sure, yeah.
Anyway, I really liked it. Yeah. And, during COVID, the podcast that I did was, I don't know how many local people listened to it, but I know some did because I got hits, but
Yeah.
it went everywhere.
Yeah.
It was in England, it was in Ireland, it was in Scotland, it went to, in Wales and Sweden. I don't know anybody there except the Swedish cook.
Uh,
And
love it.
so, it really went everywhere. Japan, Australia, New Zealand. It was quite flattering, actually.
That's amazing. And what was it mostly like it was obviously poetry. Did you have guests or was it just you?
Well, the first year it was, the first 6 months it was just me.
Yeah.
And then Betty Gannett, who we just lost in the summer,
Yes.
she was my first guest.
Mm,
And that one was hard. I mean, anyone who knew Betty knew she only said one word to any answer. So,
that's right.
it was a hard one to do. but we got through it. And so then once I figured out how to interview people using my phone,
Mm.
which was very complicated, um, I had guests, and that opened up a lot more room for me. And I had guests from Europe and Canada and the US. So that was nice.
Yeah,
You learn a lot about people when
absolutely.
you just put them on the spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing about that COVID time. If you think pre-COVID, that I was teaching at the time and we were teaching online and we just had to use this technology. We had to figure out the Zoom or the Google Meet. We had to be on screen, recording lessons. I mean, things that we never had to do before. So the fact that, like, okay, you're poet laureate and maybe that's not what you thought it would look like, but in that COVID time, you found a way to reach people probably in a way that some poet laureates who are, working in their hometown or city may not be reaching much past their city if they're not doing something like that. So I think, in a way, it forced you to, experiment a bit more.
Did. And you know, I have said this many times, Zoom was a gift to me. Once I found Zoom and I figured out how to use it, I I did workshops online. I was able to record things online that I couldn't before using my phone, and I really love it. I still use it. I am part of several groups where I participate with members using Zoom that I set up to, we have Wednesday words in Thunder Bay.
Yeah.
So once a month I gather whoever wants to come and we have a writing discussion.
Mhm.
And you know, there were conferences hosted on Zoom during COVID, and I was able to go to all kinds of conferences, one in Seattle, one in Cincinnati, I believe it was, and the East Coast. And I mean, there were things.
Yeah.
And now they've gone back to an in-person thing. And those of us who can't travel or don't want to travel to the US
Hmm.
are, we're out of luck. There are no conferences. Even Haiku Canada does not, well, they have, but this year they are not having an online arm. And
I'm actually
that's
surprised
really
about that.
sad.
Yeah, I'm surprised that there's not more of that hybrid where there's that in-person version, but then there's that online way
Yeah.
to join or at least get recordings or something like that, right? That I think
Yeah.
that's
Well,
a good
God bless
model.
Wordstock.
Hmm.
Yeah. Wordstock is one of the places that really picked it up.
Yeah.
And so did Fold.
Yes.
Fold is, you know, the Writers Union of Canada has all kinds of online things, webinar things.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's there for you.
Yeah.
You just have to, find it. But these organizations who, shoot themselves in the foot by not having an online arm,
Yeah.
where's the accessibility, people?
Exactly. Exactly. And even Sudbury Writers
Yeah,
Guild, we went online during COVID and we've
yes,
stayed hybrid so that folks can come
yeah,
to the meeting if they want to or join online, whether, I mean, we're in Northern Ontario, so sometimes weather even prevents people from leaving their house, but you can still get to a meeting. You can still participate. You can still be there. And then we have folks who are always online, who are a little bit farther away,
yeah,
and some people who come into the meeting when they are able to do that. But that hybrid
yeah,
version, I think it makes a lot of sense. So if anyone's listening out
yeah,
there who's doing conferences and workshops and various things, although I would say like you've done a lot of things with workshops, and I know that you've done readings in the UK even. That again, like Zoom has been I mean, we don't get any royalties from Zoom, by the way. we're just we're just fans of
no,
the online technology.
that's right. Nobody pays me to do this.
They
And
should.
well, yes, I was very lucky with the Office Press in Wolverhampton in the UK. I went online because someone I knew from the United States, Haiku Society of America, invited us to go to his reading in the UK. I went, and I don't know if people who know me know this, but I'm chatty. And so I made friends while I was there. And then not very long after that, like maybe 2 months after I went to Brian's reading, they invited me, not Brian, Barry,
Mm.
sorry. And I was pleased. And my last book, not my last book, but I launched internationally
Mhm.
my Enlightened by Defilement and Almost Memoir because they invited me to do it. And that was great.
Yeah.
And,
Amazing.
I wouldn't have done any of that stuff without Zoom.
Yeah,
So there's
exactly.
that.
Well, let's talk about some of your books because you have a couple of different collections. So your
Mhm.
most recent is Enlightened by Defilement, and do you want to tell me a little bit about that? Because I love that almost memoir.
Okay. Well, actually, though, the most recent is an author published chapbook called Laugh Lines and Other Wrinkles.
And I have that.
Enlightened.
Enlightened
You
came
do.
before. I do. Yes.
And Enlightened came just before that. Now we can talk about Enlightened. I love that book. It's an almost memoir because I just wanted to give myself an out in case anyone put me on the spot about something. I could say, oh no, that's the almost part.
That's right.
So it's written in Haibun, which is one of the forms I like to write from Japanese styles. And it is a memoir. I have things in there from my life. And I mean, there is humor in everything I do. So, it's not a dark book. My life wasn't a dark life. How could I end up like this if I had a dark life? We all have light and dark in our life. And we have all gone through experiences that are good or bad. And we survive it. And that book is loosely based on the 108 defilements that a practitioner of Buddhism must overcome to become enlightened. And I'm not saying I'm enlightened, but I
I think
was
you are. I've
somewhat.
known you a long time. Just saying. You're
Hmm,
getting there.
thank you. Well, I think that when you've gone through experiences in life that are good or bad, you just learn from them, and then you don't do those things again, or you don't want those things to happen to you again. And I'm not saying I went through the 108 because I mean, let's face it, I am not that active. But I do know that when I was finished, because it is based on the 108 of Buddhism, it is very introspective.
Mm.
And I found it so calming and sort of peace inspiring inside myself. I felt like so much weight had been lifted off me after I wrote it all down and put it out there. I felt, well, that's over. And strangely, I felt the same way in my first book of short stories, which is just every short story I ever wrote, good or bad.
Mm.
And it's called Daisy Chained. And I just felt like, oh, there, I've packaged it up. I've done that now. I can start again.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I feel about every book I've done. When I was poet laureate, I did a little tiny chapbook
Oh, I
called
love
Three Lines at
those.
a Time.
Yeah.
I love that one. I'm all sold
Yeah.
out. That's the only book I've ever sold out of. And it was done with Stan Forrester from Bottle Rockets in the US.
Mm.
And I did that because I thought prior to being named laureate, I was preparing to be laureate and I thought I need something.
Yeah.
So Stan and I agreed that we would do this little thing which had, 44 poems in it, and it would be my calling card.
Mm. That's a great
And then
idea.
they shut me down and I had all kinds of, you know, 3 lines at a time. But they're also gone and well, they're gone. And, you know, but every book I've done has been a release of something.
Yeah.
And 3 lines at a time is meant to be, there are nature poems in there, but there are also senryu, the human haiku,
Mm.
as with the haibun. There are nature things in there, where I relate to myself in nature.
Mm.
Somewhere I've just been bad, and I admit it. Cut my friend's finger off with a lawnmower,
Still my
like
favorite
that.
story.
That's well, it's one of my favorite too. That one and the one I wrote about my brother, well, actually, it's my uncle, Peeping Tom. I love that one because it has a connection to Roberta Berry, who is my she's my person to emulate with Haibun. She's the person I want to be when when
When
I
you
get to
grow
there, when I grow up.
up.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So there's that.
So I don't know that, like, I think most of us are really familiar with haiku because English teachers like myself made kids write them, whether they wanted them to write them or not. We made them do it. But I don't know that
Yeah.
everyone knows what haibun is.
Well, Haibun is it's a three-part thing. So you have an introductory title, and it should tell you something about what's coming. And then the prose piece is it's basically a prose poem. In my case, it was a memory that I was using, and then there is a wrap-up haiku or senryu at the bottom, which tells you. So basically, what you're getting is, here's what I'm going to tell you. Here it is,
Mhm.
but look what happened next.
Right.
And that's when, you've finished your haibun. And you want me to do it? The lawnmower one?
Oh, could you? I would love that. You know, it's my favorite.
It's the only one well, it's not the only one I know in my memory because by now I've done them plenty of times, but this one is called Learning Curve. So, I learned something in here, and it says a, a 6-year-old and a 7-year-old should never be left alone in the yard where the sharp, shiny rotary lawnmower has also been left carelessly abandoned. We discuss, my friend and I. We will experiment. She will hold the leaf. I will push the mower. Wedding day, the tip of her ring finger, still missing.
still, still missing. A little sense of regret, remorse,
Well,
maybe,
there is regret.
and
Yes.
humor.
Yeah. And that's my friend Anne Loosemore, who lives in Regina. When I was writing it, I asked for her permission to talk about it because I mean it's
Yeah.
pretty personal. I hacked off the tip of her, and she said, after we were done doing, she said, "Sure, go ahead, doesn't matter." And then afterwards, she says, remember us being as close after that happened. I mean,
That,
really, we
that feels
were
kind of
so,
natural.
yeah, yeah. I guess that could happen.
Oh my gosh.
Although, we are still friends. I'm friends with her entire family. They
Yeah,
were the gift of family from across the street.
right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I love that.
yeah,
That's one of my favorite. And like you say, it's filled with reflection and memory, but also humor and, seeing sort of some of the dark things with like
yeah,
lightheartedness too, right? Like both the light and the dark in those stories. Love
yeah.
that.
What's the bad things that happen? I have grief. I've discussed grief. I have discussed in Haibun form loss and love and family is huge with me. And that's what that book
Yeah.
employs. It has that. Um, there is no right or wrong with Haibun as long as you have your basics. Well, I guess, the prose bit is kind of important and you can't mimic everything. In the title, you don't tell everything. And in the prose piece, you don't tell what happened next because that's what the haiku or senryu is for.
Yeah.
And I love the form.
Yeah.
It's just and when you practice the Japanese forms, which are pare back your words, then you learn how to pare back your writing in every form,
Yeah.
whether it's, you're not going to blather on the way I am apparently doing in a piece of written work because it's just tighter is better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what
Absolutely.
haiku and haibun and senryu will teach you.
What is can you tell us what Senryu? I mean, you've explained it to me before, but what's happening in the Senryu?
Well, I'll tell you about haiku and senryu
Yeah.
because haiku is a nature poem.
Mm,
There has to be a nature reference in a haiku. It's not a haiku if it doesn't have a
okay.
nature reference.
Yeah.
Whereas a senryu is the human aspect. So
Uh,
haiku is is man in nature, and Senryu is the nature of man. Now I write Senryu a lot because I just love people watching, and I like to make fun of them and point out their foibles, and there's that.
Okay.
So
So the
yeah,
Haibun would have the title, the prose piece, and then a haiku or a senryu. The senryu
yes,
really has the same format as a haiku in the sense of like the
it does. Yeah,
okay.
it's 3 lines, and it's well, it's no longer, you know, the syllable count or any of that.
Oh,
It's usually short, long, short. As
okay.
long as you don't go nuts and write a novel in 3 lines.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
less
like,
conforming than maybe what I taught my students back in the day.
yeah, you don't have to rigidly write to the formula. You can actually write 3 lines and actually that's one of the reasons why you pare back on, things like prepositions and such, because you were sticking words in just to reach the word count and it came out awkwardly.
Mm,
Whereas if you are just making the observation, because that's what haiku is, it's a moment in time that
yeah,
I am telling you in these 3 lines what I am seeing, and then you are seeing it through my words. That's if I haven't done that for you, then I failed it,
right.
you know, writing the haiku
Yeah, I love that. I feel like
and the senryu
poetry,
well.
or scenery, I feel like poetry of all forms is such an important tool for fiction and creative nonfiction writers because, like you say, just um, getting even to the sentence level that you're not having excessive words that are meaningless, that you're
Yeah,
really getting into the point of what you're trying to do. It really teaches you a lot about um, how to write more beautifully
it does.
and succinctly.
Well, how many times have you picked up a book and they've overwritten it so badly you just don't want to go forward in
Yeah,
it, and that's the end of that book.
yeah,
So
yeah, for
yeah,
sure. So
smaller is better.
um, you have both traditionally and self-published books. Um, do you want like is there a benefit to one over the other? Is there do you feel like there's you're more interested in self-publishing or traditionally publishing? What's I know there's a lot of writers out there who are at that stage where they're thinking, okay, this is going to be done soon, and now what do I do with it? You know?
Well, yes, I have done both ways, and I think well, let's just do with self-publishing first because I have published uh 3 books by myself.
Yeah,
Daisy Chained is the short stories. 3 Lines at a Time was haiku and senryu. And Laugh Lines and Other Wrinkles is also haiku
the
and senryu.
newest.
And yeah, available at chapters. Uh,
Yes.
Indigo,
Link
sorry,
here.
Indigo. Yeah, and the the benefit of well, okay, the benefit of writing them and publishing them yourself is that you have total control over everything that happens. And the bad part of it is you have total control over everything that happens because it's really wise to get someone to overlook it and set it up for you, critique it so that it's in proper form, because you do no favors putting out a subpar book. And I know that because I've done it. And the benefit of self-publishing financially is all that you get for selling this book is yours.
Mm,
But then so is every expense,
right.
and you can make money on it, but you also have to put out a lot of money to
Yeah.
get that book to the place where it should be. I know lots of successful self-publishing writers: Dave Wickenden, Rennie DeGroot. I
Scott
mean, there
Overton.
are people, Scott Overton. I mean, we have a lot of people who read. Betty Gannett did not sell, she would not self-publish.
Mm,
And she had 2 books that she put out with Renaissance Press. Um, I like many aspects of self-publishing.
Mm.
But again, it's a process, and you need to have the help you need to make it the best book that it can be.
Yeah, absolutely.
My last book with Laugh Lines was edited by Mike Montroy of Haiku Canada. And Stan Forrester did 3 lines at a time for me. And both credible editors. I would use them again in any project I was doing. Um, I'm the one who put together Daisy Chain, and I felt like foolishly that if all these stories had been through the, submission mill to contests or, submissions and they'd been published, then they must be great.
Right.
So wrong about that because there were flaws in those stories. And, it would have been a much better collection if I had had someone to say, okay, maybe if you do these things.
Mm.
And in hindsight, though, I don't regret that book because, again, it was like I took everything that I was parting around for over 10 years. I put it in that book. It was like I handed a box off to someone and said, here, take this to the, you know, wherever it goes. And that was very freeing.
Mm-hmm.
When I was approached by Latitude 46 to publish Enlightened by Defilement, I was thrilled.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, don't we all want to know that someone wants us?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so there's that. And the process was good. I had a good editor for the most part, and I had um, the cover is gorgeous,
It is.
and it's my own photo, and that was even more gratifying. It had a few filters and such attached, but the cover is excellent, and the book itself is set up in Japanese books traditionally are smaller than the average book,
Mm-hmm.
and so that book was just great. And having a publisher means you have plenty of help with marketing and distribution and someone to turn to when things aren't going well. And, it's all just really having someone behind you that legitimizes what you do because they've agreed to put you out there. So they must have belief in you that you would do this and or that you would succeed at it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, it's great to have a publisher. I would recommend it, but it's not that easy to get a publisher because you're up against the whole world of people who want to write a book.
That's right.
And so you have to keep that in mind. And you have to be patient.
Yes.
You know, you
The
can't
process is
just,
slow.
yeah, Thursday I decided to write a book. So I wrote it and then I put it out to publishers. And, they're going to take it because I just wrote it.
Right.
Well, that doesn't work. There is a process.
Absolutely.
And again, once the book is accepted by a publisher, there is you're slotted into a bunch of other people who have also submitted their book and been chosen. And so there is sort of I was going to say pecking order, but that's not it. It's help me out here, Lisa.
Yeah.
It's that we've
Well,
all
there's,
been sort of scheduled in.
yeah, absolutely. So there's usually, I would say, easily a 2-year wait. Like you're on the list, but
Yeah,
there's a lot of people before you. And there's
yeah,
a lot of things to happen in that time too, right? Like there's you go through another editing process and they design the
yeah,
cover and the layout and get promo happening. So they're doing that for everyone's book and it does take time. Whereas if you
yeah,
self-publish, I think you can probably get that out little bit more quickly. But like you say, you're in you do all the things. You are the writer, the marketer, the cover designer, perhaps, or I mean, you can also hire
yeah,
people to do those parts, but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
it's I mean Lisa, there are a lot of people who want to write their stories down for their families.
yes,
And I love that. I
yeah,
love that people want to, put these into a book of sorts um to give to their children. They should.
mhm,
People have interesting lives.
yeah,
And if you don't tell people what you've done, they're never going to know.
it's
Well,
true.
they'll know, but then they'll,
It goes, right? People don't
Yeah, you
remember
don't
the
always remember.
stories. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why writing it down is so important. You did your dad's
Yeah.
memoir, and that was such a great book.
Well,
I mean,
exactly the
I
reason,
mean,
like
it's
you say.
impactful.
Yeah, it's just that
Yeah,
if you don't write it down, either yourself or somebody in your family, then those stories go and no one really can say definitively what happened because it's kind of, well, I think this and maybe that, and you can't really
yeah,
spread it to the next generation because you don't really have all the details. So I totally agree.
yeah,
There's so many ways to publish these days that
yeah,
and just deciding what it is you want. Do you want to reach a wider market, or are you looking for something for your family members? I mean,
yeah.
there's different choices to be made, and I agree, there's not one right way to do this. It's just thinking
No,
about what you're willing to take on. Self-publishing is a lot of work, but I think like the folks we know who are successful at it really have it down to fine art. They know
yes,
their cover designer, they go back to their particular editor. They just know how to work through it. But I think the first time you do it is probably the hardest, you know.
yeah. Oh, the other person I forgot is Brianna North. She's a
That's
member of the
right.
guild,
She
and
is.
she is young, and she's got, she's going like gangbusters with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah,
um, the opposite side of people who want to write their story are those people who say, "Oh, I've nothing to say."
right.
That's not true. It's so not true.
Exactly.
All they need is sometimes a nudge to realize how valuable what they have to say would be, I don't know, 50 years down the road, because
Yeah.
people seem to be deeply diving into genealogy.
Yes.
And I was lucky at that time that my sister wrote down everything my mother had ever said about relatives. She
Really?
must have had an insight into what was there. And so she is the person who records our family. And that's good
Oh, I didn't
because,
know that, because so you had access to all that material and were able
yeah,
to.
but then, yeah, I can access it, but I never had any interest in genealogy
Mm,
except as it pertained to me.
yeah. Yes.
Please read Enlightened and you'll find out why. But boy, could I plug my books
I
anymore?
think you
I mean,
should
that's
just a
not
couple more
why I'm
times.
here.
No, but it's because people should read this. And there there are some sort of like what probably were family secrets at the time that you have um revealed to the world. I don't know if you should divulge those here or let people read and find out, but it's so fascinating, right? It just
It
everyone's got
is. And
stories.
that's true. And sometimes when you read something that that person, in my case, me,
Yeah.
I sat down on paper, you get a better idea why I am who I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
And let's face it, if you're going to write something like that, it has to be warts and all. You
Mhm.
can't just have this perfect life. No one's going to believe you.
No. Yeah.
Because haven't you hit a wall at one time or another? I
Yeah.
think you have to be honest about what you're doing.
Well, and that's why we read
Because,
memoir and even fiction, I think, because we want to see how
yeah,
people handle things and how we're almost, living through them vicariously and examining how they're dealing with it and thinking, oh, I wouldn't have done that, or oh, that's exactly what happened to me, or right. We're making those
yeah.
connections. Yeah.
And,
We're all
and,
human.
not memoir based, but Tim Fauner's book, That Donahue Girl.
Yes.
Well, she covers someone, and this is in every book, but not like the way she did it. But you have someone who gets into a situation, and this is the formula for writing a book. You want, well, not the formula. Oh God, that was, cut that out. Anyway,
We know
someone
what you
has
mean.
an issue. Yeah, someone has an issue. They have this part that rises. They hit a climax in their life, and then there's a reducing action, and you get to the end, and they resolve whatever issue they had at the beginning, and there is a turning point in their life.
Yeah.
And
Transformation.
it's just gratifying. And yes,
Yeah.
we do kind of live vicariously through that.
Yeah.
And we relate to things. Sometimes you don't know what people bring to the reading of a book.
That's very true.
They bring their own experience.
Mhm.
So, I mean, let's face it, we've all had loss.
Yeah.
We all have loved, hopefully. We have all laughed at one point or another, or we've not laughed.
Mhm.
And someone else out there in the world has had the same experience, I'm sure. I mean, we're not that unique.
No, it's true. We're not that unique, and but I think that literature connects us in so many ways, right?
Yeah,
It makes us
I
feel less
agree.
alone. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and poetry is an emotional offering of those feelings.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. Speaking of connection, I know that you work in formal and informal ways with lots of writers. You're one of the most supportive writers in our community, and I think all over the place. You have workshops with folks. You work with individual writers, mentoring, and just casually supporting people everywhere you go. I have benefited from your wisdom over the last over a decade or so, and your humor as well. What do you like about that? I mean, I think you just organically are drawn to just to help other writers. What joy does that bring you?
well, I love, well, first of all, I just love talking to people. You may have noticed. And I think writers really just want to be heard. So if you sit and listen to someone, and uh, and I, as the listener, have even a drop of knowledge that I think will help someone, I think we should. We are, and we are not consciously building a network of people who will support us, but we are supporting other people. And one of my philosophies has always been when one of us succeeds, Lisa, we all succeed.
Free.
So, that's been my belief. And I know it gets poo pooed every once in a while, but those are the people who don't know the benefit of it.
Yeah,
There
absolutely.
is no reason not to help someone else. There is every reason to help someone else.
I totally agree.
And
And it's that
besides, I'm kind of nosy. And so you tell me things, and oh, I get to share in it.
I love that. Well, and that's the thing I often say, we have this image of writers just solitarily working alone and I mean, yes, we do spend a lot of time with our on our laptop or writing in a notebook or whatever we're doing, but
Yeah.
it's not just about that, right? It's when you're sharing with other writers or people who are in it too. I can share
Yeah.
with my husband what I'm working on when we go out for a walk, and he nods and but he doesn't have a clue. He's very great
No.
with the podcast stuff. Thank you very much for
Yep.
figuring out the sound and all the things. But when it comes to writing, that's not his wheelhouse. So when I sit with other writers, that's where you get support and encouragement and feedback and whatever else you need. And I see you doing
Yep.
that. I've seen you doing that for ever since I met you. I think when I joined the Sudbury Writers Guild, I want to say 2012, I think you were the first person to greet me and welcome me into the fold. So I want to thank you for that because
Mm,
that was a really important moment because I was one of those folks who said, am I supposed to be here? Is this like, am I a writer? You really question yourself at
you,
the beginning.
yeah, you do. I think, and you're right about non-writers. I don't know how many times I've, you know, run into someone, particularly a friend. I'll run into them at the grocery store or something, and they'll ask me, "Are you still writing?" Well, yes,
Yeah.
I am. And, so that's why having a community of like-minded people who write and understand the solitude of it, but also understand the benefit of talking to other writers is really important.
Absolutely.
That's why the guild is such a great thing.
Hmm.
You know, it's ebbs and flows over the years, but it's still standing. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's growing. So that's good. And I think finding a community of writers is really important for every person who thinks they have a book inside them and need to let it out.
Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
everyone's like me, we all have knowledge.
Hmm.
Mine may not be what will help someone who writes sci-fi because I have no
Yeah.
no talent in that area. And but if you're writing something that I can relate to, which is just a human story,
Mhm.
then I think, I can help you. I'm human.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Exactly.
there's that.
So, what are you working on right now, Vera? Can you tell us?
No.
I feel like you have a little something, but it's we're not gonna go there yet because I know there's a little. Well, we'll hear about other things later. But is there anything in particular that you are any goals for the new year? Do you set New
This
Year's
year,
resolutions?
no.
Do you
But
do you
I
have a
used
word
to
of the
write
year?
resolutions.
Okay.
I do have a word of the year. Mine's buoyancy because the last few years have been rough. And I felt like I had to gather myself again. Last year, that was my word. It was constellate. And I gathered myself together again. And I felt like I did a decent job on that. So I feel like I'm back together as who I used to be. I used to write a lot of humor. And because of the rough 3 years, it just didn't happen.
Yeah,
And now I would like to rise into that again
I love
because,
that.
I like humor. I don't see why we shouldn't laugh. It's so much easier
Yeah,
to laugh than it is to cry.
yeah. And we need that right now. There's a lot happening.
Oh, we did.
We
Oh,
need it. Back in the day when I was really young, I really turned to music. I still love music and went to a lot of concerts and various things. Now my go-to, if I want to leave, I rarely leave the house, but when I leave the house, I would like to see a comic. Like I like to see comedy because I just want to laugh. I just want to
yeah.
sit with other people and just forget the
But
rest
I
of the
don't
world.
want to sit in the front row
Yeah,
because
don't do that.
those people always get made fun of.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
You
Exactly.
become part of
Yeah,
the routine.
for
Yeah.
sure. Exactly. So are you working on more poetry? Are you working on fiction, nonfiction, all the
Yes.
things? Yes. All the things. Yes, you are.
Well, yes, I do a daily haiku practice.
Yes.
I belong to a small, well, it's not that small, a small group of haiku poets who will be gathering together. It's called the Banyan Project and the Banyan Haiku Group. And they will gather online. And through February, which is haiku month, we will
Okay.
write every day. And there is a theme set at the beginning. I hope it's not boat signs again because last year it was using the those flags
Yeah.
to communicate from boat to boat. And I thought, I know nothing
Oh,
about that. Even though I grew up on the island where there were lots of boats around, I did not take that in. So this year, let's hope for something like, I don't know, birds.
yeah, trees. Something we
Yeah.
love that. So
So I'm
haiku
going to
month
be
is
doing that.
February. That's awesome.
Yes.
And you're a member of the I want to say Canadian League of Poets. Is that correct? Am I getting that right?
No, I
No,
am a
I'm wrong.
member of the Writers Union of Canada and Haiku
Yes.
Canada and the
Haiku
Haiku
Canada.
Society of America.
That's right.
And I'm a member of NOW, which is the
Yes.
Northern
North.
Ontario Writers Workshop in Thunder Bay,
Yes.
which gives plenty. And they are having Lit Fest coming up in the summer. I went last year. It was a joy. I
Okay.
really, I really had a good time. Plus, if you haven't seen Superior from the top end, you really should. It's
Amazing.
beautiful.
Beautiful
Yeah.
location.
And
So,
there's all that red rock and
so gorgeous.
mm,
I love it up there.
yeah.
So I always ask folks on Substack if they have any questions for people I'm chatting with. And Anne Marie asks, what drew you to writing haiku? I guess, or poetry in general. Do you remember back in the day?
Well,
When did you start writing? When did you
poet
write your first poem? Do you remember that?
grade seven.
Hmm. Do you still have it?
Yeah. Well, I don't have it on paper. I have it I mean, I do have it on paper. I've written it
Yeah.
down since. But it was a homework assignment, and we had a teacher who was stiff, and uh, you had to do your work. And I hadn't done my homework. when I was on my way to school, and I realized halfway there that I hadn't done my poetry assignment. Well, it was English assignment, which was a poem, and I just I was plodding along. It was raining. It was really not a great day, and the poem came to me, and I ran the way. I was about half a block from the school. I ran the rest of the way, got inside, and I wrote the poem down. And uh, the teacher drew attention to it and said, "This is a really good way to begin with poetry." And that was the beginning. I mean, he wasn't my favorite teacher because of his proclivities.
Yes.
And yet he was the first one to draw attention to the fact
Yeah.
that I'd done something worthy.
Yeah.
So I'm gratified by that. And then, I'm when I was really young, I'm talking 0 to, 6, I always wrote uh, things in the backyard while I was making mud pies. I did a cooking show in French. I don't speak French. I just gibbered and jabbered and, and uh, and so yeah, that's when I first locked into poetry and words in general. I realized there's a lot of comfort in words, even back then.
Mm.
And the haiku became an interest. I don't remember the year, but Irene Golis
Mm.
of Sudbury, publisher or author of um, a memoir she did, not a memoir, good Lord, haiku collection she did with Ignatius Fay, also
Mm.
of Sudbury. Um, they did Breccia,
Yeah.
but way before that, she had been the person coming to every open mic giving us haiku. And at first I was like, what is this magic? And then I thought, wow, in 3 lines, he could just hound you
Yeah.
with emotion. And and sometimes it was laughter and sometimes it was tears, but she's the person who introduced me to it in
Mm.
an adult way.
Mm.
And she started mentoring me, and it took me 5 years to write my first poem.
Mm.
I was really afraid, and for some reason, I just couldn't get it. And I don't think she had much hope for me either. But she didn't give up on me. And eventually I did come to the place where I could, you know, visualize it and do it. And so much came out of it. Like I became so much better at observation
Mm.
in a general sense. I became so much calmer because you have to kind of settle yourself into it, let yourself relax into it.
Mm.
I love it. I love all the forms.
I love that. I love both of
Yeah.
those things. I love that your teacher, even though it may not have been a favorite teacher, that somebody's kind words make a
Yeah.
huge difference, right? And that you remember
Yeah.
that moment so specifically as being a place where poetry had became meaningful to you, right? Like
Yeah.
that's incredible. And then the fact that Irene, that her mentorship for you, I think is, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but her mentorship, you have taken on that role for so many people, right? That just helping people and chatting to them about their work and looking at their work and giving feedback. So I mean, those are things that we as writers need to do is like you say, we writers need to be heard and they need somebody to talk to and
Yep.
support and encouragement it's really not useful to hear negative things about your work early on. You need to just keep working at it, and it's a slow process. I love all those things.
Yeah, you have to be really careful when you comment, on someone's work.
Yeah,
You don't know what the result will be. So you
yeah.
have to be really cautious.
Oh, I
Um,
agree.
just to support teachers because I had great teachers.
Mm.
Tom McQuay of Manitoulin Island was my high school English teacher in the last 2 years of high school, and I don't think I would have done it if not for him. I wouldn't have,
Yeah.
really invested in my what I like to call my writing career. Uh, if not for him.
Mm.
He liked what I did, and
Yeah.
it was gratifying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I have English
But
teachers
we all
as
need
well.
people.
Yeah, we need that. We need people who are
Yeah.
support that and know that we're on this journey and you're not perfect at the beginning. We're just, well, we're never perfect. We're always works in progress. I like to say that because I just
Yeah.
think, I mean, why I don't want perfection anymore.
No.
I want to just keep growing and learning and
Yeah. It is this where we break into a few bars at people who need
oh,
people.
I love that. Will you sing for us? Because I can't sing. That would be bad news.
Oh, I can't sing. I just threw that out there. You go ahead.
Oh no. Well, maybe we'll get Mike to put that in the background as the as the
Oh,
episode ends. We'll just have that. I think we
yeah.
need rights for that. Or there's probably copyright rules. I don't know.
Yeah, but I think what I just did there was fine, but any more than that, you can't do it.
That's right. Yeah. We'll be shut
Yeah.
down before the podcast even begins. We'll be shut down. Well, Vera, it was
Yeah.
such a pleasure to chat with you, as it always is. I always value our conversations, and I always laugh with you and have the best time and learn from you. And so, I just want to personally thank you for years and more than a decade of mentorship and friendship. And if you haven't seen Vera's work, you need to go find it, Vera Constantineau, and read Enlightened by Defilement for sure. It's so good. As well as your new volume, which I forget the name of all of a sudden. I see the beautiful black and white cover with your face, and it's so great. And the name is
Laugh lines and other wrinkles.
Lines and Other Wrinkles. I don't know why that just popped out of my head. I can just see the cover. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Vera. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Thank you for having me. It's been
Oh,
great.
good. No problem. We'll talk again. Do you have writing goals that you want to achieve in 2025? If you need support, encouragement, accountability, and community, join the Women Writing Circle. We meet bi-weekly to set writing goals and get pages done. Go to Women Writing on Substack and subscribe. Let's create a little magic this year. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule to have a coffee break with us at Women Writing. Don't forget to subscribe to Women Writing on Substack. If you like this episode, share it with someone who needs a writing break and a little inspiration. Happy writing! Thank you to Michael Jensen for his original music and editing, and to Mia Jensen for the logo design.